Okay. Sharika, we haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you.
Thanks. My normal 8 o'clock got canceled. So,
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I don't see any, my phone is recording this call for some reason. I don't want it to do that. Um, so anyway, I don't see anybody who's new to us this morning that I'm aware of. So, Susan, I think maybe could you introduce yourself? You've been here before, but could you introduce yourself again, please?
Sure. Susan Franny Bascom. I am the Market Development Manager for MMR Fiber Solutions. We are a fully funded new dark fiber infrastructure carrier. We're going to be, well, we should have shovels in the ground within the week. You know how that goes. Oh, wait, a
Cool.
permit didn't come in, or oops, the licensing had to be redone. Anyway, we're going to be going from the Elliott Corridor in Mesa to Tucson, a little bit east from Tucson, heading down south to Douglas, I think right after like Houghton Road, and then doing a little circle around El Paso and then up to Albuquerque. Should be the first phase, Mesa to Tucson, should be finished by first quarter 27. So
Cool.
anybody
Thanks,
have
Susan. Thanks.
questions or want additional info, just reach out.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Susan.
You
Glad to
bet.
have you. So we're
Glad to
going
be
to
here.
go ahead and get started. And Mark, I was kind of hoping Randy would be here this morning also. If I remember correctly, that I think I'm sure you saw the same email from Broadband Breakfast that I did. There's like 5 or 6 different bills making its way through Congress. And I don't know if you want to comment on any on all those and anything else that you might want to comment about.
Sure. Good morning. Mark Goldstein, International Research Center and chair of ATIC. There was probably two of the most interest. There is one with three components, none of which seem particularly impactful, but there is one for permitting and um, right-of-way use that started out as a one-page thing and now has about 100 pages and 20 different elements. And though I can't comment on the specific provisions, but generally providers are lobbying for and favoring it, and cities are fairly well set against it. If Michelle Simon from, the well, you're not a municipality, you're a county, but there may be others on the call that have specific pushback about why that bill for cities overruns their policing powers or they feel their authority. But that is one of those bills, and it is contentious between industry and municipal authorities generally.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
then,
Mark. Oh, sorry,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say in satellite news, um, um, there is an acquisition by um, let's see, Amazon has entered an agreement to buy Global Star, which is another network, and the play there is for Spectrum and for their existing satellite network, which is direct to device, satellite to mobile phone capable. And this then gives Amazon a leap on their own plans to be able to provide direct to cell services. That's an $11 billion transaction. And on the other side, I think it's uh, Blue Origin that has uh, set a relationship called Terafab with Intel that's going to be XAI. I guess maybe that is SpaceX. Sorry, it's SpaceX, not Blue Origin, has announced Terafab to make their own AI chips for space and for terrestrial use, but part of their space play. So little action in that market.
Excuse me just a second. I got a note from Mala. She's having a problem getting connected.
Yeah, Mark, the name of that bill that for permitting, I think it's called the American Broadband Deployment Act. Saw that name yesterday, I think.
And maybe we can post a link to Broadband Breakfast or somewhere that will have a article detailing that more sometime during this call. I'm trying to repair my Outlook with the Outlook tool. It's not being happy this morning. So, and then
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
one other piece of news, not local, but my client Quintillion, who I talked about last week and showed a map of the $185 million in projects that were, well, it was 250 million in projects, 185 million in grants that I've been working on. They were just acquired by GCI, a parallel Alaska company that's complementary, makes a bit of an Alaska powerhouse, and that's a John Malone, Charter Cable, and Virgin Media, and all the other things of John Malone. GCI has announced their acquisition yesterday of my client Quintillion, and for me, that's interesting in several ways I won't go into.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Cassie, could you introduce yourself, please? Cassie, are you there? Okay, we'll come back to her. And Sharika, so we have a bunch of new folks who have joined us. So you want to introduce yourself? We haven't seen you in a while. We want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Sharika Jackson. I am the founder CEO of Future Stars Inc., which is a nonprofit that does STEM programming and career college readiness in the Maryvale South Phoenix community, predominantly looking to expand to Chandler and other areas, but as of right now, Maryvale and South Phoenix. This Saturday is our 11th annual hands-on STEM fair, where we will have about 15 different STEM activities for the youth to engage with from 10 to 2 in South Phoenix at Fay Gray Recreation Center. And so we have recently acquired a space. So we also have a building, a suite on 12th Street in Thomas, where we're able to do additional classes like 3D printing. And our goal is to do an A+ certification for high school students. So that's on our roadmap. Thanks.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, he's been doing great stuff, Sharika. Any questions for Sharika? Okay, if not, let's jump into our presentation this morning so Gordon can go back to bed. So I'm certainly pleased to welcome my good friend and our friend, Gordon Fuller, who many of you have met in the past. And Gordon, I know I always tell, and I know you don't mind, Gordon is blind, but he is also a tireless advocate for people with disabilities. And it pretty much keeps up to date with a lot of those challenges and issues, and is a strong advocate for that population of people, along with all the other kinds of innovative and creative kinds of things that he's engaged in. I'm also appreciate that he is here this morning, since it's 5 o'clock in the morning in Hawaii, which is where he's been hanging out in recent times. So Gordon, always glad to have you, and would love to hear what you have to say. So it's up to you. You're on.
Well, honored to be part of such a wonderful group. And Steve, there's nobody like Steve. This man's been advocating as long as I have. That's quite a long time to be pushing for community-based broadband infrastructure. We'll get there eventually, don't you think?
Yeah.
So glad to share. Uh, Steve asked me to talk about accessibility. And accessibility, as I've always explained to my colleagues in Silicon Valley, where I spent 24 years, I call it the spec on human beings. Because engineers and techies, they're very good about understanding specs. Well, how is it then when we come to the spec on human beings, they go with a subset of testosterone-filled young men in cubicles as the primary primary group. Excuse me. And so we're kind of always trying to hope to expand people's conscious awareness of the fact that there's more of us and more to us than we generally allow for. And blindness for me was something I didn't order or want. I was a child prodigy artist, painter, and discovered I was going to go blind after studying art and design in Europe. And it was quite a shock. Now, for my brother, 4 years younger than me, the same genetic condition was affecting him. He was an astrophysicist, optical scientist. He invented video over IP. That was my brother, a company called Spectrum Vision, and they made cable television platforms for hotels and resorts. And he did the first and patents on pay-per-view video on demand. And he was a brilliant inventor, but he often spoke of suicide. And in the end, he left us back in 2007. He told me he couldn't deal with the stigma of disability, essentially. He said he just didn't have the personality for it. And I explained to him, William, you're an astrophysicist. We already know you guys are weird. Who cares what people think, that you're a blind person? But for him, it was just too much. And a lot of people have those challenges when they face disability. We were young when it first was diagnosed. I was 19, 18, I think. And at that point, I realized, well, thank heavens, I have my whole life ahead of me. I can get adjusted to this, perhaps. I'd noticed that older people, such as I am now, aren't real fond of making lots of changes in their life. And having the ability to be flexible seemed to be a good feature of my youthful approach to the world. And what I did is I pushed through it. I said, there may be more that I can learn, and perhaps there'll be some wisdom that'll come from the experience of being an artist losing my eyesight. And in truth, there was. And for me, it opened my eyes to this whole field of disability, not because I wanted to. Frankly, I didn't. It was the short bus. It was the social stigma. And young people are always concerned about how they're perceived by others. And I just had to get through it somehow. And a sense of humor helped. But when it comes to the matter of accessibility, for me, it's kind of simple. It's about the form, fit, and function of technology or services or products to the people that they're intended for. And the idea that people would ignore, push aside, forget about, the idea that there may be a broader market potential for their products is astounding. While I may not have a business degree, I did take quite a few business courses. And for me, I always thought people that were pursuing business careers were well-educated, clever people, well-oriented towards what it would take. But I've discovered that the built-in bias people have about disability, which came from, if you think of it, everything from nursery rhymes where, the twisted old evil witch in the forest was someone suffering from Crohn's disease. It was the stereotypes in supervillain comics. It's always somebody with a disability has become twisted. And so if you think of it, it's just kind of the weird aspect of our life. And then, of course, media, they only like perfectly well proportioned, perfectly symmetrical people to be their quote unquote news readers, as they call them in other countries. And so we just don't get a lot of exposure to our issues. So it's one of those areas where it's gone somewhat untended and unnoticed. Steve, I sent over to you guys a little report I wrote up, which gives all the nice resources available in Arizona and talks about the current standards, which are now going into effect in 2026. And it is that we've spent decades pursuing the more strident standards for making things accessible. And those are now very much in force in other countries. In Europe, the EIA absolutely will fine you $200,000 per incident of not being accessible. They'll even take your annual profit or kick you out of Europe altogether. So it means something to be accessible. You know, not all the countries in the world got the memo that we're giving up on diversity. I'm afraid the world is a rather diverse place. So the idea that we can ignore the idea about accessibility is just kind of built into the system. And in truth, as you hear now about agentic, that is to say, AI coding up of websites and coding up of online apps and things like that, none of those are accessible at this point. The tool isn't accessible, and the product that it produces has no claim of any accessibility. In fact, they make a point of publishing all the standards they do conform to with these coding agents, and you'll see that it's completely lacking in the area of accessibility. So you can be very much let down by the industrial focus today on new kinds of AI agentic technologies if you're going to count on them to work on your website. It's good to know that there are standards that are very reliable. They're the same around the world, the WCAG standards. And Steve, will you be sharing that in the
Sure. Yeah, sure will, Gordon.
Good. So everybody wants to get a copy of that because that pretty well gives you what you need to know. It gives you a listing of organizations that are available and consultatively. It gives you links to standards, and it discusses all of these aspects of how the accessibility laws are to be applied. So I'd like to be able to be of a service to anyone that's interested in making this work, and would offer to answer questions and see if I can help on that level. Otherwise, I'd be glad to just keep talking, but I thought perhaps it might be helpful if you have specific questions.
So Gordon, I don't know if you want to, and you kind of touched on it already, but talking about ADA and um, what those requirements are. You've got
Yes.
part A and part one and part two, or whatever it's called.
Understood. Well, very specifically, it's not about the ADA. Americans with Disabilities Act is, of course, our civil rights legislation. Accessibility is a different thing altogether, really. It encompasses the group and population, which is 1 in 4 people, 70 million people in the United States. I always point out to people there's also our family members and care providers. That's at least 2 other people. So it's more than half the population of the United States that is affected by issues relating to disability accessibility. So it's quite a substantial group of consumer product purchasers, service customers. So how is it we would overlook this? I mean, what kind of business school did you go to that you don't think it's good to include all customers? I just don't understand that. It's one of the things that's really flummoxed me. So indeed, the idea of trying to make things more accessible means giving people flexibility and personalization. And if you think of it, the age we live in with AI technologies, it's making everything more personalized. You're able to absolutely dial things in. And very soon we'll find it'll be our primary way of searching and integrating with the knowledge that we're interested in. As we explode from there into the age of mesh networks and 6G and the idea of wearable devices, you'll see it proliferating in so many different ways. And we have to really recast our thoughts on how we're going to use those tools and technologies and embrace the greater activity of human beings in the world around us than just a little wizard square in your pocket, or a soap of rope and a genie in a bottle on your desk. And so trying to make the form, fit, and function more aligned. We're really thinking that the best is yet ahead for we humans in the way that we access knowledge about the world around us. One of the sad things is people no longer connect much with nature. I saw a study that said 65% of people in the world today have absolutely no connection with nature. Maybe they have a puppy dog, that'd be close. But at the end of the day, there's no birds, there's no engagement with harvesting food or being involved in any of the things that we humans have done throughout all of the ages that we've been alive. And so we're kind of getting separated out. The big concern is as we have AI, we all begin turning to AI for our relationships and emotional engagement. And if that's the case, it's a great concern because language itself defines reality for people. And as we abandon physical reality and move into a facilitated cultural milieu like we would have with our AI platforms, we can lose that thing that is most about us, our humanity. And instead of evolving, it would be the other way around. So there you go. So, I'm sorry, Steve. I think I wandered off the course a little bit.
You do tend to do that sometimes, Gordon. But Gordon, can you talk about, so ADA, there's a deadline coming up for government,
Yeah.
local government, state, federal government, to be compliant, and then the private sector has a different timeline. And I don't know if the requirements are different, or so. Can you talk to that a little bit, please?
Certainly, people have now about a year to catch up on some of these things. It was estimated, I think, 3 years ago, that was 65% of all websites had an inaccessibility problem. And I run into it quite a lot. Apps, everything. It'll say image, image, image. That's what I'll get when I'm running around. Or worse, it'll give me the serial number of a picture, which is a big long string of data, and that'll be enunciated by the screen reader, which is how I access the web through any kind of device. It's enunciated. That is to say, a voice is able to articulate what's on the screen. And so that kind of tool isn't able to actually recognize things on the screen. It has to be coded in, and those meta tags have to be appropriately aligned. And that way I don't hear just, link, 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 or image, image, image. And I get that quite a lot. You'd be surprised how often people have badly attuned these things. And the problem is sometimes today we're using more and more automatic systems, as I mentioned, with the AIs, and they're going to do that. So over the next year, everyone's encouraged to begin embracing these standards. And if you're asking for the right answers from the people who are doing your web hosting or the tools you're looking at, you'll get the right answers. You have to be able to articulate what it is you're trying to accomplish. And fortunately, as I mentioned, the guidelines that I've provided to you there do give you every insight about what that looks like. And it's not a big deal, frankly. It's about knowing that you can't make tiny, tiny, tiny buttons, like duh. That when you have images, they should have a narrative description label. That would be great. And it's helpful for screen searches to be able to find objects or images by virtue of their description. So it improves the quality of the web experience for everyone. And that's the whole thing about accessibility. It's about inclusion. I know that's not a particularly good word at the moment, but the fact that we currently are kind of stepping away from diversity and inclusion is a temporary thing. I do believe the pendulum will swing back. I'd say we're fiercely upset about the way it's gone. And, there's no hesitation to see the change we want. 70 million people, their families and friends are kind of laying for the people that have brought this bad thing upon us. And we're remembering every one of the corporatos that has gone to the trouble of saying, we're not supporting diversity any longer. Oh, good. We won't support you. So at the end of the day, be aware that there's kind of a growing understanding, fortunately, that disability is one of those things that happens in life, and it's not something that'll hold you back if you want to push forward. So just getting through the challenge. So back to the issues at hand, we have ever evolving standards based on the tools and tech that we're seeing in the marketplace, where we've been less than innovative is kind of obvious to me because I've been working rather at the forefront of these tech ideas for decades. Spatial computing, the ability to have the natural world around us integrated into the built environment when it comes to being able to navigate and find your way and access information about the world. And so those tools are becoming quite more widespread. And if you ever want to know what the cutting edge of technology is bringing to us, you could look into the accessibility platforms that are being evolved by people who are blind and people with disabilities because they see how to push the envelope, as it were, with AI and web tools and internet connections to give people ever better access to knowledge and information in new ways. And if you think of it, it's all dependent on what you're doing in life at any given time, whether or not you want to have, full on video or just text or how these things work. I like to think of it as a palette of colors as an artist. Um, it's not one size fits all. It's the ability to give people some flexibility. Was there
So,
something?
Gordon, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, I hope I'm covering everything.
Well, I think so. The other thing, Gordon, that so you of course have mentioned website compatibility, but it's also mobile apps,
Yes.
PDFs. I mean, it's a whole range of things. It's not just the
Yes,
websites themselves.
that's right. That's right. Well, the good news is you probably won't be taken to court sued over it. And the reason for that is there's no enforcement, really. There is ultimately. You could get a class action suit and end up spending millions on it. So at the end of the day, it's really one of those things that, as I said from the beginning, are you not willing to embrace a greater number of customers? Are you not willing to acknowledge that we have an aging country and that as people age, the incidence of disability increase, impairments? And I like what the Europeans say, which is they believe disability only occurs when a society fails to create a complementary accommodation of some kind. And they did a study in Europe back in, I think it was 2010, and they identified that 50% of the people in Europe that could travel don't travel because who have disabilities because they're afraid of what they'll find when they get there. They may not be accepted, they might not be accessible, they might not be able to use the local facilities. So, like most people with disabilities like to look ahead and plan their trips, but the information about accessibility, how accessible will be the uh, Waikiki Hilton. Will the restaurants and cafes around there be close enough? Will there be ATMs that we can access? All of that stuff in other countries does not exist. It's getting there. Lots of places are really moving even more rapidly than the United States. They have less resistance, primarily because of the way their societies work. Rather than just purely ravaging the world with capitalism, they're rather socially inclined. So there's more of an emphasis on how to make sure that things are part of the community. And so we're finding that with the world that we live in today, the changes that are coming fast are innovations that do take into the consideration the whole of it all and make things more useful, more accessible. And that's it, simplifying things.
So, Gordon, can you just talk briefly about there's the requirements for government. Are the requirements for the private sector the same? And the time frame, I believe, is different, but the
Yes.
requirements, I don't know. And then related to that, which will probably be of interest to folks who are on this call, is what are the requirements for nonprofit organizations? Is that going to be the same as government? Is it going to be the same as the private sector? What do you can you comment on that at all?
Certainly. For nonprofits, it's the same as the private sector altogether. And that's covered, as I mentioned, ADA is the civil rights legislation. And there's aspects of the ADA that do address accessibility, but certainly barrier removal and such. But the laws specific to accessibility in people with disabilities in general, it's 504, Public Law 504 under the Rehabilitation Act. It was passed in 1977, which is when I got trained up in Phoenix by the people that created it. And 504 is about any federally funded organization, and maybe that includes schools, libraries, hospitals, any place where federal money is being dispensed as part of the service. That could be many of the nonprofits, and so it requires accessibility, and it's part of the general laws that are enforcing these things. 508 is the federal procurement requirement that things be accessible for federal government and within the federal government, accessible at all levels. The clever, brilliant fellows we have running things now up there in Washington have decided they don't care a lot about that. But, bad news for them, the courts totally disagree, and they're not winning a lot of cases, in case you haven't noticed, other than the Supremo Court. But the truth of things is both 504 and 508 are very much operant laws. And then we come into the general accessibility requirements, and they fall under the World Wide Web Consortium, or WCAG. And those rules have very specific requirements for accessibility on web pages, online things. Any of the current things that today we are facilitating people with are covered under those rules and regulations. And Steve's providing a link there in the chat, which is a little report I wrote, which goes deep into those areas and gives you links and the ability to take a look at that. But the implementation of those, a lot of them have been existent for quite some time. In 2016, we've had recent updates that have given people another year to be able to bring them back into greater compliance. It's also true in some ways for the architecture, buildings, things like that. That falls under the 504 and 508 and these other requirements. Well, those have recently gotten a new boost, and that's a little bit surprising. And in some ways, it was a little better because the fact that you have somebody in a centralized Washington office complex coming up with rules is interesting, but far better if we have on the ground where people live local people that are trying to find new innovative ways to facilitate the outcomes we desire. So that's the thing of it. It's like, what are we trying to achieve? At the end of the day, it's really about better serving customers, better getting information where it needs to go, helping students learn faster, removing barriers essentially to access to information and knowledge. And that's the whole of it right there. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Gordon. Michelle?
Hi there, everybody. Hey, I just was going to ask, Gordon, is there a web accessibility tool that you would recommend for us to use on our websites? Because, we're doing a lot in Pima County, and the web accessibility tool that they had us use, my page got like a 97%, right? So we're trying to fix all these things, and truly with all of the requirements for web accessibility, the death of the PDF on a website is a thing, which is great. But I would really just like to know any suggestions you might have that would help, particularly with that screen reader thing and the metadata that should be applied to pictures.
Right. Well, the first thing is a big caution. Look out for web planning tools, web hosting tools, any of those things. Like I said, the AI agentic systems, I've been trying them myself to see if I could use them to make web pages. Nothing worse than being a blind designer and not able to see your work. And for that, I use a screen reader. Screen readers built into every iPhone, every smartphone that is in anyone's hands. Grandma, grandpa, anyone could use it. It's really hard to get people to learn how to use it, though. And the reason for that is it's completely counterintuitive to what you already know and how you navigate on your screen. Instead of having your vision to guide you in navigating a screen, you use a screen reader. And what it does is when you touch the screen, it'll enunciate, speak the name of whatever it is that you're exploring. So you can touch it and it'll say Word, and you can touch it, it'll say Safari browser. And then you know what you have. And now you can double click, 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 and boom, you're in. But that little simple difference is such a lot for elders to learn. I have people I've worked with for years that are film television producers who've been losing their vision through macular degeneration. And I'm in meetings with them online. And the poor fools just won't make the leap. People like to keep using what they have, and trying to discourage them from trying to be vision people when they're vision impaired is a really hard thing. So it's one of those very odd businesses that people are very resistant to making changes when they have a way that they are used to doing things. So the problem comes from the hosting environments who try to offer solutions. Like, for instance, you can put this thing on your website, and then anyone coming there can click on it and then get an accessible version of your website. It's a little shortcut cheat around thing. Those don't work. They're terrible. We all hate them. When they show up, we avoid them because they interfere with screen readers. They don't work well in any reasonable way. So that's not a good solution. So at the end of the day, the best solution is you just have to sort of pony up the reality that there are people out there, like myself, that are sometimes precluded from getting the benefits of the knowledge information that you're trying to share. And you have to kind of help reach for them. And for that reason, having some working knowledge of what it takes to make these things go is the deal. So trying to find people in the community that are doing that kind of good design work, because at the cutting edge of these things, it's not just good, it's so much better than what people have been doing previously. And so with that in mind, keep your eyes open, as it were, to the benefits that come from having a more streamlined, more effective way of moving about and getting to the information. Usability is the one thing that I would really emphasize, because while you can make everything on a screen accessible, why does everything on a screen have to be there? It better have a damn good reason, because otherwise it's just cluttering the whole thing up. And so if you think of it from the user experience side of the desk, when I come to this, and remembering again, a lot of people are older, like myself and my colleagues. and when we come to a website, we're just trying to get to the facts. You know, where's the company profile? That's what I want. You know, where is the investor information? Where is the product warranties? Where do I find this stuff? So trying to come up with a way to do that better is the trick. And as you know, with AI, that sort of thing is getting to be much more streamlined and much more custom. But again, the tools that the AI people are offering and the AI people themselves, we're really bad at this. I've been using all of these AIs. I've been using AI since 1985 in Tucson when I took delivery of a computer graphics animation system using AI as the core processor. And it was from a big fat company, Evans and Sutherland. They made all the top stuff for NASA and everybody. And so with that, I began my journey. But at the end of the day, the AIs aren't themselves conscious, made aware of these requirements. And so it's really difficult to count on things like that working when you need them. And so helping the thing along by yourself being knowledgeable. And 97% is a really good score. And I'd say in Arizona, people are far more likely to be interested and concerned about making sure elders access the information. Because like Arizona, here in Hawaii, we have a lot of retired people, a great many, and more so all the time in our society and the other first world countries. Japan, for instance, Germany, we've all heard. All these countries have aging populations, and as such, these issues become ever more important. There's about 14 million people with vision impairment sufficient to need tools for accessibility. And as such, that's a growing number. And there's about 80 million people over the age of 65 coming online over the next few years. And those folks will have ever more challenges by way of impairment. And keeping in mind that most of them aren't going to be really slick at knowing how to work around their disability. So if you want to keep people with you on these journeys, you have to be very creative and thoughtful about what the experience is from that side of the desk. That's how I recommend it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, Michelle, did you get your question answered?
Yes, I mean he didn't specify a particular usability tool. We have those kinds of things, but I get what Gordon was saying. You know, talk to the people who are having these issues and are they design and how the websites are being designed because oftentimes what happens, so like with Pima County, we have a large scale company that is managing our website and we have multiple pages and they're not necessarily placing a focus on usability or accessibility, and we're having to work with them to implement changes to the pages. That's absolutely fine. You know, what low-hanging fruit, don't make everything PDFs. It's not a good thing, right? And making sure that things are the basic screen readers, you know, if the only tool that somebody has is the accessibility tools that are in Windows, and that screen reader is your website functioning with that. So I kind of get what you're saying. Start with the basics and then move to the much larger stuff. You know, the management of our website is not my job, it is someone else's job. And we have a whole committee of people that are working on this effort. But you gave me some good ideas to help provide them with some input because I'm on that group from the customer perspective, right? So we're talking internally about what we're supposed to be doing with accessibility as far as our website is concerned, the information we're trying to impart to the community, that kind of stuff. But I'm also talking to them about, you know, font size makes a difference and you know, Lexile level of the materials and, you know, just a number of things that will help to improve that access. And so it's a whole conversation, but I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Indeed,
Thanks, Michelle.
user testing is the best thing possible. If you can have a small group of users giving it a spin, that's your best option. And indeed, a lot of the people that ended up doing graphic or web design, they're not familiar with these ideas. I don't know why that is. We might ask our institutions cranking these guys out. But indeed, having sensitivity to the issue is number one. I'll tell you a funny story about PDF very quickly. I lived in Silicon Valley for 24 years, and Adobe was accepted by the General Services Administration as an acceptable publishing format for all government documents. Well, every time Adobe would hold a press conference, there'd be a group of people that are good friends of mine showing up in the white front row, long white canes, every one of them, and asking the questions when it came around to the press, when are you going to make your thing accessible? At every press conference, every moment that there was available, they were in the face of Adobe and the GSA saying, hey, this is exclusion. You can't allow this. And finally, hammering on them, Adobe did make it accessible, ultimately. Is it great? No, it's kind of awkward and stupid, but that is a PDF. That's how they work. And so trying to come up with good standards that can be implemented across the board that make things good for everyone has been the trick, and that's difficult with the kind of economic structures we have for competition. It doesn't equal always good social policy to just have it as a free-for-all. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dave, you have a comment, question?
Just a couple of quick observations. This thing, because I have now lost most of the vision in kind of my left eye,
Oh,
and I live in macular degeneration central here, where our average age, I think, is 75. So I would echo and second everything that you said. I'm using the haptics in this watch more than I ever have. I can do a whole lot with this. So I think developing a haptic language that use temperature, vibrations, pulses, and probably wearing a couple of these devices could uh, has a good future. So I'm really encouraged by that, and I do think they're expanding the accessibility a lot. That being said, there's a lot of work to be done at the ground level, and that means a lot of stern talking to. And I just had this with the University of Arizona. I have a very simple question from one of the departments. The only way to communicate, period, is email. That's it. I got on the phone. Somebody actually answered the phone. Can I leave a message? Oh, we don't do that. You can send a text, you can send an email. And I said, I'm having a hard time seeing my keyboard right now. Is there anyone who could just call me back? Don't have that. So fundamentally, email is one of the worst tools for communication and inefficient ever invented. I worked for a company early on where very early on started to communicate nationwide through email. And the company president said, this is nonsense. I mean, you better very limited use of this. It's a terrible tool. So that being said, those are conversations. I don't, in my opinion, the department at the U of A would not be ADA compliant if the only way to communicate with them is send an email and hope that somebody responds. So that's my little rant on everybody on the call. If I've,
a
I've,
big embrace to
I've got a chair made in Norway, and I had a simple question about the leather, and you could actually there's actually a person at the factory in Norway that will answer the question and look your chair up in a book and tell you what you need to know in about 5 minutes. So the glories of just human speech and inflection, that's my rant right now. So if any of you right now will only communicate your organization through email, shame on you.
right on, my brother. I have to say, I just got some new hearing aids. They have AI powered voice recognition, pattern matching things in them. They're really quite excellent. And wouldn't you know it, the only source of information are miserable FAQ kind of PDF things, a website. There's no humans involved. And here's a big news flash: people like people. I can tell you every time. I remember trying to call Banner Health, eh? and, and get information out of their miserable, ridiculous apps or their stupid AI answering the phone. The damn thing never gets anything right. And anyone who thought that was a good idea should be not just fired, but maybe, put it in prison somewhere. I'm sick to death of having to deal with AI. So I usually try to blow through it pretty quick because it just doesn't work. And the truth is, people like people, and people are empathetic. They're supportive. They're just really a good thing. And I suspect that after we get done trying to wash out all of the white collar jobs and so on, and workers in the factories, we'll discover that, wow, people like people, and we could really bring them back into the loop, and that would be a really good thing. So I've had to say that when I finally get a person on the phone at Banner, they're always sympathetic because they have to use the same crap system that I do, don't they?
We need to move on. So Jessica and then Ryan, I'm going to put you on the spot after Jessica to see what thoughts you might have. So I'm just giving you heads up. So go ahead, Jessica.
Yes, I put in the chat a couple of resource points, and I'm going to add a couple more here that we've used. So the first one, Morphic, morphic.org. its little image is a little chameleon. It's an initiative from Raising the Floor, and if you need a response, Greg will immediately basically respond. He's fantastic. It's a tool that we've utilized with a bunch of partners, and including our library system here that's based in the San Antonio and Austin area. Um, it's completely free, and it goes on to public and personal computer systems that utilizes the accessibility tools already within the device and puts it on the home screen, because we've realized that a lot of people using public access computers, and especially people that are low literacy, digital or otherwise, are afraid to touch anything to even potentially get to the accessibility tools. So it puts those tools right there at the bottom for people to be able to see, the making the mouse larger, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's completely free, and we've utilized that with a lot of partners. And the other, for a screen reader, there's screenreadersimulator.com, and that allows you to see things in different aspects on your website, what that looks like and sounds like as going through the website just in a standard screen reader. And then it has a visual impairment simulator. And obviously I don't know what that actually, how accurate that actually is for people's particular things on there, like color uh, blindness, etc. But I will tell you the diabetic retinopathy one is very much spot on, because I have experienced that myself, which I'm very fortunate to have been able to access great treatment for that, and my vision has stabilized and back to 2020. But that part is very accurate. I will
Wow.
say from experience. I'm very, very fortunate that I've lost a significant amount of weight. That's helped that stabilize, and was able to access medications, and then had injections in my eyeballs for a year and a half. So that was fun. But
Yeah.
uh, but there's macular degeneration, glaucoma, cataracts, that gives you a view of your website for that. And then it has some other learning materials on there. And we've been utilizing that for, we're in the process of rebuilding aspects of the website, and retweaking some web pages. And not everything is live yet, unfortunately, but we've been utilizing that as a tool really heavily. There's also some Chrome plugins that are free to be able to utilize, that can be both screen readers and utilizing that as a simulator to view things. And then Cornell has some great options for screen reader and keyboard simulation. And then also, lastly, nvaccess.org. I'll put that in the chat here in 2 seconds. But that's developed by a couple of people that have been doing music camps and other things for children who have vision loss. And they have a free download screen reader resource that you can put onto Windows or other device options there too. Again, that's completely free. So just wanted to plug those for some free resources. And then webaim.org as well has some screen reader simulator options to look at. So I'll finish plopping those in there, but wanted to just let everybody know that those are some options that are available.
Those are great. Steve, why don't you get that list and pop it onto the one I gave, and we'll have a nice community resource there.
Yeah, and we've been utilizing that, I will say, in conjunction with Morgan's. For anybody that isn't aware, excellent San Antonio plug, Morgan's Wonderland is the only fully accessible theme park in, I think, the world, but in the country. Happens to be in San Antonio. And they are building in process right now, which I'm really excited about, a fully accessible hotel. And they're doing all kinds of things along the way to make that as positive as possible. And they have the their Morgan's Workforce Accessibility Center. And we do a lot in partnership with the MAC for accessibility classes with our navigators. And so they've given us some resource points on a few of those for the screen readers because that is their very much area of expertise. And so that's been really helpful for us and then a lot of other community partners as well. And lastly, for the person who came on just before that was mentioning 3D printer resources stuff, check out Bibliotech because they have 3D printer free classes and things like that. So I will finish talking and plug everything else into the chat here.
So
Wonderful.
Jessica, can you just tell people who you are, who you're with?
Yes, my name is Jessica Strom. I'm the Senior Program Manager at Digital Lift. We're an organization that does variety pack of things, but mainly is professional development for people in the digital access, digital equity. And again, I know some states don't like that word, but digital equity space for digital navigator training and certification, and then also preset classroom materials that's multilingual in a variety pack of languages, English, Spanish, of course, but also Mandarin, Russian, Tagalog, a few other language options there as well. And then we also provide direct services in various areas of the country. I'm based in San Antonio, so I oversee Texas and a few other regions. And so we provide that training there and then that navigator shadowing and training for organizations that are trying to either start doing more digital equity work and or expand programming.
Gold
So,
star.
so Jess, so is it Jessica or Jessa?
Jessica, I respond to Jess, not Jesse, and hey you. So
Just wanted to make
I've
sure.
been called worse. It's good.
I just wanted to make sure I was calling you correctly because I
No,
noticed you
you're
didn't
fine.
say Jessica and your registration here, and so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting it wrong.
No, you're good. I kind of run through whatever anybody's fine with, but randomly people will continue to call me Jennifer, and I don't know why, but it's another J word. But yeah, no, I'm good with whatever, and I do respond to hey you. So.
Okay, so Ryan, I'm going to put you on the spot. I gave you a warning, but I'm sure you must have some thoughts about all this.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stephen. I also respond to Hey You as well. I'm the retail program manager for older adult technology services from ARP. So I help to oversee operations in 9 Western states, where we empower older adults to use technology to enhance the way they age. So Gordon, I really appreciate your presentation and conversation this morning because accessibility is one of our core tenets.
Yeah.
So our main website is seniorplanet.org. Um, and I'll be honest in saying it was never meant to be the main portal for programming. In fact, right before the pandemic, we were only doing in-person programming. And so when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden we realized, wait a second, we aren't set up to do virtual programming. So we immediately created a call center. So Gordon, I really appreciated what you were saying about people don't use the phone anymore. And for us, it's actually become a critical lifeline for our participants, especially if they're new to technology. So that's been really important. And then also, as we've seen, during the pandemic, it was this thing of, okay, we're going to do all of our programming over Zoom because it's accessible and affordable or free. But then if you're new to using Zoom, how do you learn about Zoom, right? And so
Mhm.
for us, it was really important that we had that call center to help people learn how to use Zoom, but then also log into Zoom to then access our training on Zoom. Um, but during the pandemic, when the pandemic hit immediately within 3 weeks, we converted all of our programming online through our website. And again, as I mentioned, it wasn't ever set up to be that way, but it's become our main portal. So over the last 2 years, we have revamped our website. In fact, we just relaunched it 3 weeks ago after 2 years of feedback from our participants. I'm really proud that we received a Webby Award in 2021 for accessibility, and we have a widget in the bottom far right corner that is exactly what you're talking about, Gordon, of screen readers, all of that. But we were also having to learn quite a bit because before part of that process in 2021 of updating our website when we were switching all of our programming online was we had a bunch of pictures that had text embedded, not recognizing how bad that is when you're using a screen reader because the screen reader won't read it. They'll just say exactly as you're saying, picture or some horrible, sequence of characters. So, given that, I actually wanted to thank Michelle. I know she just left our meeting, Michelle Simon, but during the last meeting, she actually brought up that it might be the end of PDFs with this new law. So I actually updated our team. I was told that our website, we have a web developer that we pay. They had actually done an accessibility audit, and I might recommend that for anyone, especially if they have staff or have the resources. But that's where we had just done an audit to say that we are ADA compliant. But I'm still learning that we're needing to do more work, right? So I let our team know that, for example, all of our handouts right now are PDFs, and that is problematic, right? At the same time, we have over 400 different topics. So to convert and change all of that is not going to happen overnight, right? But this is where, Steve, I want to thank you for these meetings because it's giving me the heads up, right, to let our team know in real time feedback that they need to update or move forward with. And so I'll leave it at that, but just wanting to say really appreciate this presentation this morning.
Well, as we can see, it's a pretty complicated issue. It's not a simple fix and, just move on. That this it's going to raise a lot of challenges for a lot of organizations about how they become. It's not just an issue of compliant. We certainly legally that they need to be compliant, but it's beyond that. It's being able to make sure that people can access the information that they need.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so, it looks like he just left. So
Which is,
anyway, anybody have anything else that they want to share?
I'd just say, remember the intent is to communicate. I mean, what are these technologies that we're talking about for? And at the end of the day, wouldn't you want it for the broadest possible engagement? But I'd like to suggest that it's not just about being compliant, which is understandable that the standards are creeping up and it means people have to get busy on this. But more important is to look ahead because that's where the innovation comes from, the excitement of it. As I mentioned, the AI platforms are horrible, for accessibility. I have to ask my wife to push the button for me on AI searches often because the button moves. It's in different places. It's not consistent. People overlook simple things like the cardinal points on a screen, the corners, the bottom, the center. Any of those could be a consistent place from screen to screen so that the controls are obvious. But AI companies don't care anything about that. And they feel free to move it around, change it anytime they like. So they're just on every level missing the point. And I would like to recommend there's the Vista Center for the Blind in Palo Alto, California. They sponsor, and you can see it on YouTube. It's called the Sight Tech Summit. Sight, S-I-G-H-T, not Sight. Try to tell your search engine that. Good luck. Sight, S-I-G-H-T, Tech Summit. And those YouTube videos are blind people from around the world pushing the envelope with haptic and tactile technologies, spatial audio, acoustic signatures in rooms and things like that, so that people, as we evolve into wearable systems and haptic and tactile feedback and garments, clothing, belts, shoes, all of these things have been explored, experimented with, and the future ahead for humanity looks very bright. So get ahead of it, be creative, understand that the spec on human beings includes people who may not have good vision, good hearing, good mobility, good cognitive function. And at the end of the day, we can make a really better world for everyone, more suitable for everyone.
Also under Site Tech Global.
Site Tech Global, S-I-G-H-T Tech Global. That was Kealoha, who's part of my accessibility technology.
Amber, you have a question or comment?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. We're transitioning the county, and I'm a web editor for our websites. And my department, Community Workforce Development, we are eyebrow deep in PDFs. It has been quite a challenge And the transition for our team to adding alt text and reading orders and things like that has been really hard because nobody in the department other than web editors who took our training know that this law is in place and that guidance and compliance needs to be followed. And so I found that I've become a huge advocate for that. But sometimes the things people say kind of make me react a little bit like, what are you talking about now? Like it's just very hard to deal with it. But my question to you, what makes a meaningful alt text? Because I write these alt texts and I'm like, am I being too creative? Am I being too descriptive? Am I not being descriptive enough? What makes a good alt text for an image?
Well, I would say the difference between a human doing an alt tech label or description on an image or any of the headlines, things that are otherwise inaccessible, is just the good old human quality of thinking about what would we want someone approaching this knowledge to be able to know about it. And I can tell you the AIs do this now. It'll say
Mhm.
person with a picture and trees and you know.
Yes. Or they say they can't compute it most of the time. Like especially if
Yeah,
it's like yeah.
it's true.
So
Human.
sometimes I'm writing and I feel like I'm like way too descriptive. I'm like, there's a sun with mountains going down the horizon. And I'm like, is that meaningful? Is that wasting time or is it, but it's hard to describe things sometimes. Like if it's a
Well,
logo and you're like, what image would this create, But I really appreciate what you're saying. And it takes heart that it makes me want to be a better advocate and to
we,
make sure to
we might
advocate for
want
others.
we might want to mention also that media should be captioned, and that includes your
Yeah.
videos and things like that.
And
And
I
that's where
caption my videos in English and in Spanish. So
there you go. And so the
yeah.
creativity about that is really something. If you ever like to know what that's about, you can go to a movie and ask for a narrative descriptive headset when you go to the
Oh,
movie.
okay.
And with
Oh,
that,
that'd be fun.
it's an art form, you see, because it's
Yeah.
not the script. Somebody's not reading a script to you. They're interpreting what's happening on the screen, and then the Foley editors, the people that put the action to match the narrative description, it's really quite tricky. And some
Hmm.
are good, some are lousy. I've had really bad translation of recent Korean great movies that we've attended, and the transcription is horrible. They just don't get it right.
Well, I thank you and I thank you for everything you do.
So Gordon, is there any reader these days that can read PDFs or not? Or
Well,
PDFs are just kind of
yeah, no,
go away?
it's built into the operating systems of many of the smartphones or computer iOS or OSs, and so it's all kind of built in. The thing of it is, as I'd mentioned, as people lose eyesight, they're not real fond of making the transition. So you've got kind of an uphill battle with people as they age being aware that there are these resources and then getting them to try to use it is really tricky. People just don't like getting out of their comfort zone. So it's a challenge in every way. I think at the end of the day, the things that are getting wide use are indeed narrative descriptive captioning. People who speak only Spanish are learning English by using these narrative descriptions as well as the captioning for deaf people. It's become a major use of these things. So in truth, one size fits all. That's not a good plan. Being able to be flexible and adaptable as human beings, which is our hallmark, if you think of it. The reason we're still here after all the millennia that we've been around on the planet is because we've been flexible and adaptable. We're the species of the Homo sapiens that did adapt, and so this is one of those areas where it's built in our nature to be flexible and adaptable. I mean, I pioneered virtual reality and continue to do so. I would say for workforce development, as far as accessibility, consider spatial computing. The idea of the mesh networks from 6G that are coming, very sensitive to this group, those things will totally open a whole new window of possibility as we encounter the world around us in the digital cyber physical continuum, which is an area that I've been interested in 30 years now. I'm still waiting for it to happen, mind you, but there you go. the idea of how the world around us is engaged and what people bring to it and how we're going to relate to that is the next frontier. And if you're bringing up young people, there's huge opportunities for people working in retail, spatial computing, for people able to think ahead of what's coming and build for it, because it's not going to be long. I mean, by 2030, we're looking at 6G pretty much ubiquitous in most places. It's already happening in Korea, Japan, and China. We're just a little behind the curve because we have weird people running our country. Mhm.
Dave, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, no, just a quick thing for you back, but and I don't know how widely known this is in your community, but when we lived in Colorado in Vail, they had a very active program for blind skiers. I worked with them a little bit, but the comment was that organizations that service blind people were largely unaware that that was available. So
Yes.
blind blind folks that I worked with were actually very good intuitive skiers. They just worked off of beeps and stuff like that. But once they got to know it, so um, that was kind of a leading edge place when it came to accessibility and
Yeah.
but spread the word. If you know someone who want to go skiing, call ahead and put some pressure on some of these resorts to have those, and they likely will.
In the Bay Area, we had the Lighthouse for the Blind, which is run by blind people as well. It's one of the few national organizations of its kind. And we find that blind people are really pushing the envelope in the technology area. One of my friends got a MacArthur grant. He runs the accessibility for Amazon. And so the truth is there's more ahead and better life for all of us if we're just open to the possibility that we need to be more aware of how people engage with information. If you think of it, someone riding a bicycle has the same problem I do, and that is they don't want to access the screen as they're riding along. They need to have a voice recognition system working on their side of the desk. So that's it. Working the other side of the desk is the trick. Think about how the range of uses, people in construction and things like that might want to think about how people would engage with information on a job site as they need it. Just being creative, that's the better world ahead for all of us. And this accessibility part is just, again, recognizing the spec on human beings includes cradle to grave, that we hominids, and not forgetting some of us.
Okay.
If you make it back to Tucson, maybe we can go skiing at Mount Lemon. I would love to do that again. So I don't know if they have a program there, but your presentation was fantastic. I appreciate it a great deal.
Thank you. Yeah, they have good programs in Tucson. There, in truth, there's a lot of programs. We have silos for people with disabilities, cerebral palsy, deaf, blind, and as such, there's not a lot of cross collaboration. And there's very few people with disabilities. I mentioned 70 million. Well, you won't find most of them showing up at meetings, for their groups. A lot of people prefer not to. They want to still be part of the regular world and they don't want to specialize in some way. So it's an understandable thing. As I mentioned, my brother preferred to die than to be a blind person. So everybody comes in with what they have, and you have to find a way to accommodate those differences. And so don't expect that the people that you're going to be seeing as your customers or students coming at you being very knowledgeable or skilled about these things. It's not something that in our society we promote it in any reasonable way. So in the future, that could change very dramatically because we have such a large aging population. It's one of those things where the better world ahead really does involve making everyone a part of it. Mm-hmm.
So Gordon, I got to say that we're going to end here in a minute, but I got to say that since I've gotten to be friends with you and you've been participating with our meetings, that it's been very enlightening to me to begin to understand the needs of the disabled population, and it's also been very interesting for me. I go to lots of my wife's got a lot of health related issues, and so I go to a lot of doctor's appointments and hospitals and stuff like that. And it's really been eye-opening to me about how many people have disabilities.
Yes.
It just blows me away. I mean, I knew there was a a population of people who had disabilities, but just never really could comprehend just how big a population that is and the
It's
challenges people have.
it's 1 in 4 people. That's quite a lot of people right there. I
Yeah,
mean, my goodness, to think that we're overlooking the needs of 1 in 4 people. Oh dear. And again,
yeah.
family members. Come on. Yeah.
And you can become part of the
Anyway,
population at any time. That's like the one's
That's
quote
right.
unquote special population that anybody has the potential, if you will, to enter either, through, accident or genetic or what have you. And it's just not something everybody thinks about or factors in.
That's right. Few people wake up black or rich. You know, this is a group anyone can join at any time, and it's probably someone in your family. Hello, and so how is it we overlook it? But believe me, from my side of the desk, it's really one of the sad and disappointing things about our society. It's just how boneheaded our business culture. That's what I would say. Corporate culture, very bad. People really need to think harder about what the social engagement is with their business and how it's going to better the world, other than just the next quarter's profits. All very nice, I suppose, but you know.
anyway, so Gordon, again, thank you for getting up in the middle of the night to be here with us. I really appreciate it. It's always good to see you and to talk with you, and appreciate you being here.
Hey,
Anybody have any last thoughts before we end for today?
it's a great group. I've learned a great deal being here, Steve, over the last 3 years. It's been very enlightening. We've all been through hell with this
Yeah,
broadband initiative. It's been a joke almost.
yeah,
What a thing. And it's something I dreamed of for 30 years, how this was going to evolve, that we would then find a way to connect people on the other side of the digital divide. How's that going?